evening once again, and welcome to Doctor on Call. It is a pleasure to be here as always, and of course, as we always say, the program is intended to share information with you to help you improve your wellness. Yeah. Tonight we have quite a large contingent. As a matter of fact, Dr. John should be joining us, but of course with us after a little vacation, Dr. Nixon, she's back, and she's also joined by Dr. Noel, no stranger to the program. Of course, as we said to you in the last couple of weeks, February, Cancer Awareness, and we will be talking a bit about that. Last week we spoke about some of the common cancers that affect men. This week we will speak about some of the common ones that affect women, and of course with some emphasis on obesity in children, which can lead to cancer in adult women. So hey, get ready. We welcome all our viewers on GBN Television 7 and 11, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also our listeners on K105 FM. So it's a good time to welcome Doc back. Doc, good evening and welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry about that. Good evening,
Yes.
everyone. Tonight, the wind is trying to blow us away and blow out every little peas flower after we never get any peas for Christmas. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm really happy to be back after having been in the freezing New York City and the East Coast. The day they froze the razor blades and threw them at me.
You know, and just looking at that little smirk on your face, I think you're trying to tease me, but that's all right. I'll have my turn.
It's actually very hot. It's really very hot tonight. It's hot. If you notice, I'm sweating. I think the dry season is just dropping on us like a load of water.
I'll tell you what. I was looking at the weather forecast earlier, and the temperature tonight is forecasted at a low of 25.5. So it is going to be a little warm tonight. It will be a little warm tonight. So let's welcome Dr. Noel. Dr. Noel, welcome back. It's been a while, so I'm really pleased to have you back on the program. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and it's nice to be back. You know, Sonia's dragged me along tonight, and I'm really glad she has, you know, because we have some nice things to talk about tonight.
Yes, indeed. Wonderful. Well, we do expect Dr. John to join us. She's not here yet, but nevertheless, we can get started, and I'm sure she'll join us throughout the course of the program. So it's Cancer Awareness Month, February. We've spoken about cancer in men last week. We had Dr. Bradford with us, and before that, of course, Doc was here sort of laying the foundation for the discussions over the next couple of weeks. So I know we wanted to speak a bit about obesity, so we can probably start there, obesity in children, and then we can move on to how that can. Yes. So Doc, I'll let you open, and then we'll bring in Dr. Noel to speak on it as well.
So I think this is a good time to talk about obesity in children, because we really do have a problem in Grenada, in the Caribbean, and in the world. The percentage of our children who are obese, meaning that they 35% over their expected weight for their age and height, and of course put into different genders. That's a problem. We never had that problem before with our children being obese as we see it today. And the truth is, it has, it's across all social classes. Like I said, it affects both genders, and it is growing. So when the Food and Nutrition Council did their research, and they do it every year on their preschool children, they see a constant increase up to 4%. No, if 4 in every 100 children in Grenada are overweight added on every year, it's a big problem, okay? This is a big problem, because if you remember nothing tonight, I want you to remember that obese children who are grossly overweight, right, are are likely to be obese people, adults. I want you to remember that the obesity we're seeing is related to our lifestyle. That is the level of activity, what we eat, right? And generally those two things, which can be broken down into a little more simplistic than this. So for example, I asked a mother, what do you give your children to drink? What do you guys drink at home? Juice. What you put in a juice? Why am I squeeze a fruit, but I put sugar? And that sugar added is a big problem for us, okay? It's a problem all over the world. And it's easy for us to go to the supermarket and buy the convenience food. You know, those box juices that come in the well, I don't know, pasteurized, they call them, whatever it is. The UHT, the ones that can just stay in the box forever, right? And every mother goes to the supermarket, well, most mothers go to the supermarket and buy a half a dozen for the week for the child and put it into the lunch van. And it's convenient, but it's not healthy, okay? So children just don't move. I was telling them when I was going to convent, I never knew you could get a drive up to convent in the morning, right? I never knew you could get a drive up to convent. And where I live, my father could actually drive up Tempe and down Lucas Street and drop us at the bottom by the top of Market. No, my father drive through River Road and tell us walk up the hill. We need to exercise, okay? So our children are not as active. Most families have a car or they take bus to school. You who grew up in the country, remember how children in our rural areas walk to school in the morning. That doesn't really happen. I remember driving through, I don't know, Tivoli, along there, going to go back into Grenville. I was being driven because I don't know those places. And I see plum on tree. Plum on tree don't exist where I grew up because we watch a plum in the morning when you walk into school, and in the evening, we go and harvest what is left on the tree for us. We didn't have money to buy the packaged food, you know, the cookies and the corn curls and whatever it is, and the candies and the candies and the candies. Just so much sugar that we give our children. And yet our children do not go home and play ring a rosy and who stole the cookie from the cookie jar and run up and down and play bat and ball and all the rest. They go home, they get a handheld device and they sit. So that inactivity, the diet, and yet still mommy probably cooks macaroni and cheese. Well, you know my feel about macaroni. What the hell is macaroni? What is macaroni? It's just flour with water that's compressed, baked, and then you add water to make it like a salt, and you add some salty cheese and some bad fat cheese, and so you give your children more cholesterol or too much salt, and then too much carbohydrates from this very quickly digesting highly processed flour food. And so our children often still don't want anything that's nutritious. Is that if you give them carrots, if you give them pumpkin, if you give them lettuce, tomato, whatever it is that they should be having more of, half of their plate, they don't want that. Because it's really nice to eat a salty food and the food with a lot of fat. That's the pattern we've developed. So we've really been unfair to our children. We've all been, and we've been unfair to ourselves. Because as parents, we also indulge. We get it in school. Our children spend most of their time in school, and that's what they eat. So you have our children not receiving proper nutrition, and above all, not accustomed to eating nutritionally correct food. And that is a challenge. That is a big challenge for us. And if these children are going to become obese and become obese adults, we know that obesity is one of the biggest contributing factors, one of the biggest risk factors for a lot of the diseases that we're trying to fight. My colleague told me he went to the hospital to visit. He was visited from overseas, and he went to the hospital to visit. And almost every male in the surgical ward had a part of his body amputated because of diabetes. Our men are supposed to be providing for us. They're supposed to be leading their families. What are they doing lying down in hospital beds with missing limbs and missing digits? Okay? It means that we have not done very well with our men. In the last 10 years, the rate of diabetes, despite all the talk we've talked, besides all the medications being provided, besides facilities being provided for healthcare, the rate of increase of diabetes globally has been 400%. much more than used to happen 40 and 50 years ago when you didn't have stuff. But we ate differently 40 and 50 years ago. We were more active. We did things that helped us to burn off all of those stuff. And even when we eat proper food, we still eat too much. We like big bowl of, when you have an oil on it, must be the whole calabash full and all the rest. And not very many of us get up and walk after we do that. So those are the challenges we have because our children are also learning. And like I said, they're learning to drink sweet drinks instead of drinking water or drinking fruit drink that you make at home with a little bit of sugar. You know, remember grandma just make it brackish just to taste, just to add a little flavor to it. We're not doing that. We put in the sugar and it's really, really very sweet, right? Or we're buying ready-made drinks that are also very sweet. And if you look at the back of the containers, we will see that there is actually nutrition information that we should be following as parents. We should all be following as parents, and we should be teaching our children how to identify what's good for them. We have not been doing that, and it's sad, but you know we're in trouble when it comes to childhood obesity. And so the National Chronic Disease Commission, and Jane could talk about it, has actually developed a policy and plan that we have submitted to the government for their ratification. And there is World Obesity Day that's coming up, which we can talk about later, where we're going to try and approach and do some interventions to try to start turning back, create that awareness. And this is not about children, this is about families, this is about our whole country. This is about all of us changing our lifestyle to enhance the quality of wellness that our children experience so they can take it into the adulthood. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. So Dr. John has joined us. Dr. John, good evening and welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, Godfrey.
It's been long overdue.
That's what you say.
Yes, it's been long overdue. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I'm coming back to you because I want to spend a little time talking about cancer in women. So before we come to you, I want to bring in Dr. Noel just to speak a little bit more on what Dr. Nixon said earlier. Dr. Noel?
Yes, no, I think everything that Sonia said tonight is so true. I think you'd almost call it an epidemic of childhood obesity, and that's across the world. It's not just Grenada, it's across the world. But you think of sort of first world countries, places like America, and you think of, obesity because of the large size of every portion, but it's actually happening here on our shores. It's here in Grenada. We have the data, as she said, from the Food and Nutrition Council on our preschool, but there's also data on older children as well. And those numbers are going up and up. It's up to 6% now I think in the last study at our preschools. And so it's an alarming increase. And as Sonia said, childhood obesity, it's a concern because of the health implications. So, I just looked up the official definition with WHO, actually, because I was doing some other work tonight. And it actually says here, I have it here, it says the diagnosis, it says obesity is a chronic complex disease defined by excessive fat deposits that can impair health. And so that's the World Health Organization defines it as that. And I think that's it. Obesity causes the deposit of fat. And the deposit of fat in the body leads to all sorts of illnesses. So we said diabetes. It lends difficulty in the body handling sugar because you have this inflammation from this sort of layer of fat that starts to cover all the internal organs. And the pancreas that controls the release of insulin, which controls sugar. There's inflammation there with all the fat cells, and it doesn't regulate as well as it should. So whereas before we would see diabetes type 2 and it is common in Grenada, but we'd see it in older people, maybe in their 50s, where their diet has got a bit out of control and they're kind of older and not exercising so much. We are seeing it in what I call children. They're not children, but young adults. So as Sonia said, we are seeing adults in their late 20s and 30s, literally I've seen them with having to rush to the hospital in crisis. They having toes and pieces of their feet amputated. These are young people at the prime in the workforce who are being limited. And that we know that diabetes and those illnesses, they lead to high blood pressure, which can lead to strokes, can lead to heart attacks, and we see on we just had the death register, the announcements right before this program, and you are hearing of death announcements of young people, way younger than we used to have, with illnesses that age group very, very rarely suffered from, and so we see that a child who is suffering from obesity often translates into an adult suffering from obesity, and that then lends to an adult who has these issues. And we're seeing, there is a direct link between cancer and obesity. Dr. John is going to talk about that later. So, it increases the risk of breast cancer, for instance, in women, increases the risk of prostate cancer in men. Obesity is linked to many cancers. And we saw in COVID that people who were obese were way more at risk from death from a virus like COVID. And at the moment in the world, we have influenza A, influenza B, RSV in many countries. That is the number of people in hospital with pneumonia at the moment in different countries is staggering. And the risk of that, if you are obese, because obesity can affect your respiratory function, it can affect how you sleep at night, it just compounds everything. So, we have this situation occurring in our children unless we do something to intervene on their behalf. And that means the parents, the teachers, the grandparents, the entire nation. We are going to have a nation of young death and people suffering, and a cost to the health service that we really can't afford. So, so it's worrying. So we have, as chair of the National Chronic Disease Commission, Sonia sits on that commission with me. We spent last year re-looking at, there was a policy on childhood obesity that had been worked on before COVID by the commission, but with COVID everything had come to a halt. So and there had been widespread consultation with all the different factors across Grenada, including the youth, including teachers, including sports people, including all the different factors across Grenada. So we went back to that policy, revised it, brought it up to date, did a lot of work on it. And as we say, that is with the Ministry of Health at the moment we're hoping to be ratified, because the action plans in that are essential for our children's health, and this event that Sonia's talking about, which we can talk about now or in a little bit, to do with a week of activities, taking what would be on the 4th of March, World Obesity Day, really turning the focus on children and childhood obesity, and having a series of events that will both educate and activate the people in Grenada.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Noel. So, Dr. John, good evening again, and welcome. And I want to bring you in here because earlier today I was talking to someone about the program tonight and what we will be talking about, and I mentioned, the issue of obesity and cancer, and they looked at me like, obesity? I said yes, and I went on to talk a little bit about it, and I got the feeling that probably not many people are aware of how, and I would use the word here, instrumental obesity is in resulting in cancer. And Dr. Nixon and Dr. Noel spoke about, obesity in children. And how it can, of course, go on. And this is where I want to bring you in, because we're talking about cancer in women, and of course we're going to speak about some of the more common ones. But I want you to take it from there, on the issue of obesity and how it can actually lead to cancer in adult women.
In adults, okay, great. great. And good night again, and to the listening audience. And we're going to tie in the cancer situation with what Dr. Noel and Dr. Nixon have been speaking about. All right. So, it's a very good opportunity for us to touch on this topic, although tonight, we know last week, I think there was something on men.
Yes.
Cancer in men. And it's Women's Day coming up on Saturday, the 8th.
Right.
So I think it's an opportune time for us to revisit this with our female folks and let them know how serious the situation is. Okay, globally it's bad, and in Grenada it's bad. Because you listen to the death announcement, as Jane said, and you're hearing so many people dying.
Yes.
And I get the question, well, what happened? How so much people dying from cancer? Long ago, we never used to hear people dying from cancer. We never used to hear young people dying from cancer. It comes back to the whole business of what Sonia said, what we eating, the sugars, and the obesity. Right? And before I get into that, there are one or two words that I want to establish before we go along. Yes, we talk about cancer. Patients may hear malignancy, they hear tumors, and it could be confusing for the layperson. Right? So you go to the physician and you're told that you have a tumor. All right, it's basically a growth. It could be benign, it could be malignant. Right? Benign is non-cancerous. It doesn't spread. You have a mass somewhere on the body. It doesn't invade. It doesn't go anywhere. Yes, it could get bigger, but that's about it. In the case of the malignant one, that is the one that's going to spread. It can invade surrounding areas, and it can go to other organs, right, or other places. So it starts one place, which is the primary, and then it spread. Good? So we want to establish that difference. And usually the diagnosis of cancer, there are, ways you're going to arrive at it, which we'll talk about later. So how does the obesity tie in here? Okay, what does obesity does? It creates chronic inflammation.
Right.
And once there is chronic inflammation, there is the release of certain hormones and so that causes the cells to multiply. That's it. Simple and straightforward as that. The chronic inflammation that these fat cells create is what predisposes one to cancer. So it's important that you keep those cells at bay, because they are going to multiply, and they're disorderly cells. Right? The whole no control. Because cells supposed to grow, there is turnover and different hormones that hold them, but when you get into that phase, they're just going disorderly. And that is what we end up with.
Right. Let me ask this though. And we're talking about cancer in women and of course obesity. Is there any gender-related issue as it relates to obesity in women and men? In other words, are women, which gender is more prone to obesity? Or just a matter of what you eat and what you eat?
It's a matter of what you eat. What you are what you put in.
Right.
Right? I want some.
But women also tend to be
what you are what you put in. So he has this kid eating the Bible, right? So basically, what you put in is what you are. So if you're gonna eat sugars and sugar cake, and I usually say, listen, there comes a time when you have to talk to the food,
right?
And you have to let the food know. We've had a very good relationship over the years. Right? When I was younger, I was able to climb the tree, I was able to do this, and we were friends. But at this stage in my life, I think we have to part ways a little bit. So you don't feel too badly. So it's like you're having a conversation with the food, because, for some people, food is company.
Yeah.
Right? And especially the bad foods. Right? Because there are a lot of lonely people in this place.
Yeah.
And they find company in food.
Yes.
Right? So it's easy to have a chocolate. It's easy to have some ice cream. and these things. How many people you see just leave and go and snack on maybe a carrot or some pineapple? No.
Very unlikely.
Very unlikely. And you snack, you look at the television, and next thing you know, you drop asleep. And what's happening there? That's where the calories adding on. And you have to get up at 5 to go to exercise. Man, let me roll up. The rain falling. Nice excuse. Outside cold. That sort of thing. I've tried that once, but I have a walking partner. She said, come on, we're going.
I know. Yeah.
Yes. So, both genders prone to obesity.
Right, okay.
Right? Have you seen some men walking around super obese, and then they come to you and there is maybe with the pancreas or some sort of cancer, the prostate. We've seen prostate cancers in industrial quantities, and we're wondering why. We drinking a lot of alcohol, smoking is on the rise, and obesity. These are the three top, right? And we can break it down into environmental factors, which we can control, and inherited or genetic factors. But 90 to 95% is environmental. In terms of genetic, that you can control. And in terms of the genetic, it could be maybe 5 to 10%. You have some families that, yes, are prone to cancers, but that's a small portion compared to what is out there.
But some of the different types of cancer, or the common ones that affect women. Let's make the connection with the obesity. And for example, in women, the cervical cancer, the breast cancer, although men,
uterine, ovarian.
Right. How does the obesity? Is there a direct link? We spoke of inflammation, but is there a direct link? Because one may ask, well, how does obesity maybe aid to, let's say, cervical cancer?
Okay. Cervical is, in a greater part, more of a lifestyle cancer.
Okay, all right.
Right? Exposure to the cervix, to HPV and all of that. And yes, the obesity could influence. But when we talk about uterine, we talk about breast, right? These fat cells produce estrogen-like hormones. So if you know about people who do hormone replacement, you're always told once you have your uterus in place, you want to do a combined treatment. Nothing wrong with doing the treatment, but you let it be combined. If you had a hysterectomy, then estrogen alone, once there is no history of family history of breast, you can get away with that. If not, combine progesterone and estrogen. When you have obesity, you have estrogen-like hormones being secreted. So this is like having unopposed estrogen, right? And that is where that comes into influencing the cancer.
Right. Okay. So let's just.
Sorry, I was going to interject there as well, because I think you see these cancers rising as well as the woman gets older. The risk can get higher. And obviously, women go through their menopause. And when they go through the menopause, the whole metabolism in the body slows down. And then women are more likely to become overweight and obese, because if they tend to become more sedentary, they're exercising less, but the rate they're burning calories is also reducing. So it's like a double whammy. So you see women, as they reach sort of towards that 50 period, suddenly putting on weight, suddenly the body's changing, suddenly they have no energy, and suddenly they start getting the diagnosis of breast cancer. And it's kind of all part and parcel. The risk factors go up. The hormone effects, as Dr. John was saying, with the added fat layer, the added inflammation, the added estrogen effects. All right, so it's like for women, we were talking about who's more at risk. There's different risk factors for men and women, but that is a period of time that is a difficult time for women at the best of times, and the added weight just can compound a lot of problems.
Dr. Nixon, anything you want to add before Dr. John continues?
Not really. I think they have done a lot of the biochemistry and the physiology. And I think
Which
they've done a
wasn't
good
my
job.
favorite subject.
But the truth is, those are all realities, and we're not really different. Just one little thing I wanted to say, that sometimes what we see is that obesity can be more present in our females because they have we do other things. We have babies and we have our hormones go crazy and all of it. So women are a little more prone to obesity. But she's right. We see our men walking around. They drink a lot of alcohol, which is pure sugar, and they don't exercise, and they smoke, and they do all the crazy things. And we see them putting on weight. And of course, all of us probably just eat too much.
Food, as Dr. John said, food is a comfort thing, eh? So you do.
Some of us just greed, some of us just licorice. No, just eat. Our portions are too large, and we've spoken about it. Have you ever had a tea plate? You look at a little tea plate. Mm-hmm. When you serve yourself some oil down, don't you serve yourself one big 9-inch plate that overlaps and is 3 inches high?
Doc, one might argue that that goes with the territory. Why would you want to give yourself a little bit of oil down when, of course, you must get a dumpling, for example. Let's put it at least. You must get a dumpling.
A dumpling.
You must get a slice of breadfruit. Mm-hmm. You must get a piece of yam, a piece of banana,
a piece of potato.
And so let's just rest that there for a bit, all right? Now, in oil down, nobody puts just chicken. So you have to get a piece of chicken. You have to get, of course, 2 pieces of salt meat. And we're talking 2 pieces of tail and 2 pieces of snout or something like that. So, Doc, tell me, how does one of them plate themselves a little plate of oil?
But you don't have to eat a whole quarter of one breadfruit as a slice. Let's get real. Everybody think, we like big breadfruit when we're making oil down, but everybody wants to get a whole big slice of a quarter of a breadfruit. No, that's a whole meal. Right, 1 grain of it, we're good. I look at a slice of yam. You know what's a good thing about it? You can go and dance to all the meals that you usually play on the breadfruit cook and come back and have some more food. But not us. You have to have the breadfruit piled over so that who behind and get no oil down.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, I said as a little light moment, but on a very serious note. On a very serious note, we have to take stock of these things.
Oh yes.
We have to. I mean, and I think Dr. Noel said it earlier. There was a time when some of these illnesses, we kind of expected them in the elderly folks. When you got up in age and so on. But now, and I get to look and listen to the obituaries every evening, and you seeing 20-something and 30-something and all of that, and it's just worrying and scary. So we definitely need to take stock of ourselves. But John, I want to continue with you for a little bit.
Before you go there, okay, yes, we establish obesity as one of the factors, right? One may say, well, okay, so what happened to all